Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Cook with OC webinar with Osteoporosis Canada. Before we begin today's webinar, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices, located in Toronto, are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your cooking demo host today. This webinar will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge. It's not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice, but please reach out to a registered dietitian or healthcare provider if you do have questions. Now, we would love to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments related to the webinar, just click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen or enter your comments in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar within the time available. As we do these webinars, it's all about nutrition because it's a key component for strong and healthy bones. And the 5 recommendations from Osteoporosis Canada for bone building nutrients are calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, and vitamin K. And if you haven't already, there's a really easy tool that you can use to help and see if you are getting enough by what you're eating every day. It's called a nutrient calculator, and you can track the foods that you eat daily. It's on the Osteoporosis Canada website, but now you can also download the app onto your smartphone. So if you have an Apple iPhone, you can go to the App Store, or an Android, you can go to Google Play, or just get on the Osteoporosis Canada website under Nutrient Calculator. So we also provide strategies. So recipes, yes, but also strategies for getting bone building nutrients. And this recipe today is really part of the bulk cooking, batch cooking, but also popping it in the freezer for use multiple times or at another time. And a great way to make sure that you are getting the bone building nutrients, stay on a budget, and reduce food waste is to do a meal plan ahead. It helps make better choices. It also reduces the stress of cooking last minute. Also, a well-stocked pantry, freezer, and refrigerator helps ensure you will get the bone-building nutrients you need. It's great when you can find things on sale. You don't have to purchase everything all at once. It's also about buying versatile items you can use in multiple ways and doing the batch cooking or baking and pop extras in the freezer like today to use another time, and also making cooking accessible for everyone. So again, we'll talk more about the gnocchi recipe, but it's an accessible recipe that you can make. It's not really difficult in terms of the labor that you have to do it, but if you need help, please ask for it. You can also take a break and also sit instead of standing. So as I kind of mentioned, the featured recipe today is for spinach ricotta gnocchi. And each serving has 250 milligrams of calcium, 20 grams of protein, 0.2 micrograms of vitamin D, 24 micrograms of vitamin K, and 0.4 milligrams of magnesium. Now, if you have not been on our recipe section lately, it's new. We've updated it to make it easier for you to follow the recipe, see the nutrients, and also print it out. But you can get this and other recipes at osteoporosis.ca/recipes. I'll also pop it into the chat, the link. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our friend, Emily Richards, who's a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and she's the author and co-author of 11 cookbooks. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publications that include everyday cooking and healthy eating. And she can be found on TV, radio, and webcasts, just like this one. Welcome, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Tracie. Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing? Tracie, you look gorgeous in that white osteoporosis office.
New background. Thank you so much. And you look very summery. We're having, if you're in Ontario, we're having unseasonably warm weather. It's really quite nice, actually. So
It
the
is, it's
garden is
beautiful.
still giving us a lot of vegetables.
100%. I have some right on my counter. I cannot stop.
I know, me too. Absolutely. So we today's a little bit, if you saw the post on Instagram, you may know that we're actually celebrating a little bit with Emily today. So Emily, do you want to share what we're celebrating?
We are celebrating the 10th anniversary of my Italian cookbook, Per la Famiglia. So, for those of you that are online and that have known this book for the last 10 years, maybe you picked it up a while ago. This is the first edition cover. It was kind of a collage of recipes inside. But it's been printed a few times. I think it's in its fourth edition now, and it's generated into this beautiful covered book, still titled Per la Famiglia. The recipes are still the same with a few fix-ups, because for those of you that know from the original, there's a few, edit issues. Those got all fixed up. And it's been 10 years. I can't believe that 2015, this book came out and people are still using it, which I'm grateful for. And I thought it would be a great time to showcase one of my favorite recipes. And I know it's one of yours too, Tracie.
Oh, I do love gnocchi and I like making them. So, and you know what? And because I have my copy too. Oh, you can't see because I have we thought this would be a good idea, the background, and it didn't work. But I have the book too. Oh my gosh. So Emily, we were chatting, and because we have so many great people that join our webinars, especially our cooking demos, and the recipe actually comes from her cookbook. So the one on our website actually does come from the cookbook. We just changed the sauce. So it's a really great recipe because I think it's a nice way to spend some time. It's affordable. You're going to pop some of these in the freezer, enjoy some when you make them. But that's part of a great way to kind of fill one of your pantry areas that you want to do. So, I mean, and it's also not that strenuous. So, we like to talk about that. If you have some issues with your wrists or your hands, or you want to sit and do it, it's actually a really simple, easy recipe.
It is for sure. And I, over the years, have been able to make this recipe with many, many people across the country, including my own family. And the one thing I always do is I videotape hands. So whether it's my aunts, my moms, and it's just amazing. You can see that, sometimes age does affect that little bit of handwork,
Yeah.
but they can still make gnocchi. And I think that that's so special. So if any of you are making them, little hands as well, do that little, get your phone out, take a little video because it means so much later. And it's also a great way to remember how to make the gnocchi. It is super simple, which we're going to go through the whole recipe together today. And they can freeze, and it's just a little bit of Italian that you want to dive into.
And so Nancy actually just posted, she was playing with dough for all ages. Yes, that's great, Nancy. We love that. And also, these can be eaten more than one way. So again, the versatility of it, however you like. And so we are, as we always do, we're going to do our apron giveaway, but we also have a couple of other surprise giveaways, courtesy of Emily, that she generously provided us with. So I say away we go. Emily, here we go.
Yes, let's do this. And you know
Let's
what I
do
love?
it.
This
What?
recipe has very few ingredients. So
Who
you're
loves
gonna
that?
you have
Yes.
you have the recipe, and Tracie will post it again, but you can jot it down to memory because it
Yes.
really is super, super simple. The first thing
Okay.
I'm going to start off is with the ricotta, which I'm going to grab out of the fridge. And we're using a tub or about a pound of ricotta, but I wanted to show you if you have the option to go to a local Italian deli. So this you can get in the grocery store where all the ricotta is sold. And this is just traditional. You can get a smooth, you can use a light, whatever you like. But if you have the opportunity to go to a cheese shop or an Italian deli where there's fresh ricotta in the morning, so this is typically how it comes. It has a little bit of the brine in the bag, and that's just because there's holes in the bottom and it's wrapped in this bag. Guess what? This is more than a pound, so it's always a deal. And if you've never had fresh warm ricotta, I can't tell you what you're missing. You really need to try it. And there's a homemade ricotta recipe on the osteoporosis.ca website, which is also from Per La Famiglia. So if you want to dig in, it's definitely experience with some fresh bread. We will have to do bread in one of these eventually, Tracie, because it really is so soothing for the soul and for the body. All
I'm
right.
there. We're going to do it.
I said it, it's being recorded, so you know we're going to have to do it. So we're going to start off with our ricotta cheese. And as I said, if you wanted to, you could totally make the ricotta. It really is simple. If you have a few liters of milk, you can make it at home. But I'm using store-bought. It's cold. It's really easy to kind of just get going. So if you've had gnocchi before, a lot of the times it's a potato gnocchi that you've experienced, which are beautiful. They're light and fluffy and delicious. And the ricotta gnocchi has that similar texture, but the flavor slightly different. And guess what? You really don't have to cook anything. We're going to add spinach to this. But if you don't want to add spinach, you don't have to. You're going to miss out on the beautiful color and that little bit of flavor. You could also cook some kale or Swiss chard. As long as you chop it up really fine, it's perfect. So I'm going to talk about the spinach for a second. So see this big tub of spinach here? This is 300 grams. So, nice and full. You're going to cook this down and you're going to get this much, which is almost a cup. Okay. And that is what we're going to use in the recipe. So I'm going to chop that up. Now, if you don't want to cook your own spinach, you don't have to. Guess what? They still sell it frozen. So you can buy it frozen and thaw it. You'll still need about 300 grams. So the frozen blocks are about 300 grams. If you're buying the bags of frozen spinach, they're about 500 grams. So they're a little bit more than what you need. So you can just use about half the bag and thaw it completely. And the important part is squeezing out that water because we don't want to add more liquid to our gnocchi. We want them to still be light and fluffy and taste delicious. So I've squeezed out my spinach and then I'm just going to chop it up. Okay, so I just want, and you can, if you want to, you could kind of pulse this in a food processor. That would work too, but I'm not looking to get this as kind of a liquid. I do want to have the chunks because I want to have those nice little bits of spinach throughout to add color and flavor, and it's a great texture. Okay, so I'm going to add this into my ricotta. And for those of you that are, true Italians, ricotta is how you would say it. Ricotta is another way you'd say it. Ricotta, it's all the same to me as long as you love it because it is quite delicious. And then I'm going to add 1 large egg. Okay, get that in there. Try to make sure you don't get any shells in there because you don't want a little bit of crunch. That can come maybe with a little bit of a crisp Parmesan or sage later. And then we're going to add some salt, okay, because we want to season these. So about a half a teaspoon of salt is going to go in here too, because we want it all seasoned. There was no seasoning in the spinach, by the way. It was just blanched in a pot. I put a lid on it, steamed it, and then put it in a colander and then let it drain and then squeezed it out. Okay. So these are what you could consider your liquid ingredients if you wanted to. And I'm just using a fork to kind of stir it all together. And you can see that the spinach starts to separate after it's kind of been in that little blob all chopped up together. And the egg is dispersed. All right. Not very difficult so far, right? You don't have to bring out any big machines. You don't have to do any of that work. It's just a fork and a bowl. This is the part that I like to spend a little bit more time on. It's the flour going in. So I'm using all-purpose flour. If you wanted to, you could use a combination of all-purpose and whole wheat. If you have flour from a small mill, it's a little bit different. So I always suggest that you're adding a cup at a time because the texture of the gnocchi is really important here. We want them to be light, fluffy, and delicious. So I'm going to, this is classic home ec. For those of you that, may remember home ec class or maybe have never taken one, you're going to scoop out your all-purpose flour and then just level it out. Okay. I'm not tapping it down. I'm not doing anything. I'm just getting all that flour in. And then I'm going to add a second cup. Now in the recipe, it says 3 cups of flour. I'm going to stir in 2 cups to start. Okay. Because I can always add more flour. I can't take it away. I don't want to start adding liquid to this. So I'm going to just stir in my 2 cups of flour. Okay. Now, note, if you're not adding spinach, you may need only 2 cups of flour. Because that spinach adds a little bit of moisture, you do really need close to the 3 cups in the end. But if you don't add the spinach, you're not adding that additional moisture, so you tend to use a little bit less flour. So you can see I have a nice kind of crumbly mixture here as the flour is getting incorporated. And then what I like to do is add about a half a cup of flour here at this point, okay? So I'm gonna just eyeball my half cup in my, I don't want to dirty another measuring cup. So I'm just going to use my eyes and do about half a cup this way and sprinkle it. I will leave some out here and then stir that in. Okay. So the dough does start to get a little bit stiffer. So if you need to take a break, you can. Okay. You could also, if you wanted a smaller amount, you could do half a batch. However, here's where the trick lies. It's half an egg. So that's why the 1 egg, because there are make-aheads for the dough and the gnocchi itself. All right, so I'm going to get in there now with my hands and bring the dough together, okay? So I'm not really gonna squeeze this dough because as I squeeze it, I'm adding the warmth from my hands, which then means I might have to add more flour. So I really just kind of want to bring the dough together, and you can see that it kind of comes together really nice and easily, okay? So I'm gonna pick up all those bits of the flour, just like that. Just kind of push down on it and gather it all up. And then I'm just going to put it onto my board. And this is where, if we were doing this class in person, guys, I would totally have you touch this dough. It's so important to get your hands involved. And that's one of the reasons why I love cooking. I'm definitely a tactile person. I touch the dough. I can explain how, the texture of it, but you touching the dough kind of will help you remind it. So if there was a virtual way for me to get you to touch the dough, I definitely would. So I will show you the dough. And so here's our pile of dough as one big. So you can see as I'm touching it, there's just a little bit stuck to my fingers, but nothing on my hand. So it's a nice, not firm dough, it's still kind of supple. And you'll notice I'm not kneading it. I'm not getting in there and I'm not kneading it like bread, because the more I do that, the more exposure of that ricotta needs more flour. So this really helps kind of the light, airy texture of the ricotta come through. So what I'm going to do at this point is cut it into 8ths. So I'm going to put half there and then cut this guy into quarters. So if this ends up being a little too much dough for you to work with, you can cut it into 6ths. Okay, it's really up to you. And sometimes it's also about the amount of space you have on your counter. If you're working with a small counter, maybe you need to move to the table. My grandmother used to do this on the dining room table. She just she made a lot more than 1 tub. And if she was making potato gnocchi, there was about a 10-pound bag of potatoes waiting to be kneaded all together. So if you need more space, you can always move to a table. And sometimes you need that lower level so that you're over top as you're kneading. Because sometimes the countertop can be a little bit high, right? And then your arms get tired, and you definitely don't want that. So as you cut it, you can see that nice spinach throughout there. This is now sticky, okay? Now, most people, as soon as they feel sticky dough, they want to throw flour all over it. I don't want you to do that quite yet, because I want that little bit of stickiness to help in the rolling of the dough, okay? So this is where, when I'm working with kids, I always tell them that they're rolling it like snakes or logs, okay? So the goal here is to try to have an even thickness throughout this rope, okay? So, and you'll notice my hands are open, my fingers are spread apart, and I don't have a lot of pressure going on this. I'm just kind of opening it up and trying to get a nice, even strip, okay? See how nothing's stuck here? Nothing's on my hands. This is when I'm gonna start to add flour. The reason why I'm doing it in this stage is because the flour that now sticks to the gnocchi is gonna cook off in the water. And then I'm going to end up with a nice light gnocchi. And you can do the same process with potato gnocchi as well, okay? So I'm going to take some of my flour here and then just roll it in the flour like so, Okay. So far, this is going pretty fast, right? This can be a weeknight meal if you wanted to, especially if you have friends coming over. This is actually a great recipe if you have friends coming over, especially for the friends that want to help you in the kitchen, right? You can have the dough ready, they can come and they can start rolling out the dough. Just let them know that all the gnocchi need to be the same size so that they cook at the same rate. You don't want to have really big gnocchi and then small gnocchi. Sometimes I will be honest, I remember going to a restaurant in New York really long time ago, and I really wanted to try the gnocchi. And there's a gnocchi version. It's called gnudi, and it has Parmesan cheese in it. That's the main difference between the ricotta gnocchi and the gnudi. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'm going to have this. What came out in the bowl were these big, uh, huge, probably the size of my knuckles there, three in a bowl of these gnudi. And I was like, oh, this is different. I cut into it and it was very, very firm and not that kind of light, fluffy texture that I have grown up with gnocchi. So I was a little disappointed and I realized how important it was to have that kind of smaller size of gnocchi. And I feel very lucky. This recipe is from my zia Lina, and she used to make it when we'd go visit her all the time. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario, and that's where my aunt lived. And when we moved to Southern Ontario, we'd go back and visit our family, and she would make these gnocchi, and they were phenomenal. One of the reasons why is because she made them small so that you could eat them with a spoon and you had all these beautiful little nuggets of gnocchi in your mouth, and it was fantastic. And it just made it extra special. So we really loved visiting Selena. It was, we always knew we were going to get a great meal. All right, so we have this lovely rope here. And then what you're going to do is just start cutting it into equal sized pieces. So these are about half an inch, maybe. You can make them a bit smaller if you want, and also make them a little bit bigger. Just commit to the size that you are going to do, okay? So I'm going to cut this rope. And as I'm cutting it, Tracie, does anyone have any questions? Because this part really does go quickly. So if anyone has questions, you may have had them as I put it all together.
I mean, this is actually a lot faster. And I just want to say you can sense, Emily's passion, like, and her love of cooking, because it really came out. And a lot of times cooking obviously is emotional, right? It's not just tasting good, but it's all about the memories and stuff. So this is great. Couple of questions. Somebody's asked, could you repeat the tip about if you half the recipe, what to do with the egg? They just missed that.
So you're going to have to beat the egg and then measure out half of that amount. I think it's about 2 tablespoons. I haven't done it in a while. So you could pour it into a measuring cup and then just measure out half and then save that half egg if you're having scrambled eggs the next day. If you need to glaze something, if you're baking something, you can use that as your glaze. So you definitely can make a half batch, just use half of everything. It's just that egg that gets a little bit tricky, that's all.
I will just say, as someone who like when if I make a mess, I want to make a mess one day. I don't want to do this again. So I would make the whole completely optional. I would make the whole thing just so I don't have to make a mess, for a second day. So, but that's great. If you do want to, and you don't have room, obviously not everyone has a lot of room to store. So great. There is another question. Somebody's asked, Maria asked, could you use cottage cheese in lieu of ricotta?
So I have actually tried that. And what I did was with the cottage cheese, I buzzed it up in the food processor to get it a little bit smoother.
That's
And
right.
then, yeah, because you don't want like the bigger lumps. I did try it with the larger curds of cottage cheese, and it was a little too shocking in my mouth to have those curds come through. The one main difference between ricotta and cottage cheese is the tanginess, the acidity in
Yeah.
the cottage cheese. So that doesn't really go away. But if you love cottage cheese, like if you use it in your lasagna, for example, you're going to have no problem using it in your gnocchi. And a lot of people do like to use cottage cheese because of the protein. It is typically a little bit higher in salt, I believe. So you may want to reduce the salt that you're adding so that it doesn't become too salty. Because then remember how you're going to serve it, because there might be cheese involved and other things that might create that saltiness. So just be aware when you're using it. And then obviously our amounts of protein and calcium, those types of things will
Right.
vary based on what you're using, because ours is based on the ricotta cheese.
Absolutely. So I think oh, and one last question for right now, then we'll
Yeah.
keep going. So, Lenore asked about fresh versus frozen spinach. Does it
So
matter? Is this really about getting the water out?
it is really about getting the water out. And in all honesty, I find the frozen spinach has a lot more stems in it. And so I tend to
Ah,
pick up this baby spinach container because there's just those tiny little stems. You don't have to worry about removing them or anything because they cook up beautifully and they chop up really fine. Whereas the frozen spinach, they have those thicker stems because it's the big leaves of spinach they use. So sometimes you're not really going to go, but that's me exaggerating that. It is just a little bit thicker. So as long as you get the water out, and it's just really about, they both will take time. If you buy
yeah.
frozen, you have to let it thaw. If you buy the fresh, you have to cook it and steam it, and don't use it while it's really hot either, because you also don't want to be squeezing it hot because you're going to burn your hands. So just let it cool a bit before you squeeze it. But flavor wise, they both work.
Okay, great. Well, you know what? We do have a couple other questions. I'm going to hold them because we're going to keep going. Are you good?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally good.
Looks good.
Um,
Look how fast everyone can do this. It's great.
This is actually one of my favorite recipes to do as a cook along, because in person or as a webinar, because it's just, you can really work together and then you can kind of wait for people to catch up, and then you kind of feel it. And this really is a family friendly recipe. So whether
Yes.
it's a grandmother and a grandchild, or an aunt and a child, or even just a bunch of adults getting together, it is truly a fabulous recipe to do. And you can bulk it up. So if you wanted to do a few pounds of ricotta, because then the great part is that everyone gets to take some home. And if you've
Yeah.
ever been to a pierogi party, it's exactly the same. You make the dough, you make the filling, everybody makes pierogies, and then everyone gets to take some home. So it really truly is that kind of family and food friendly recipe that, it's one of my favorite things. And it's just, for me, it's very relaxing. I know some people get stressed in the kitchen when you mention dough. But this one truly is, for me, a relaxing moment. And it's also a great time to think about, for me, my family and those that came before me that worked on this recipe. So that's a little bit of kind of the history of Per La Famiglia too, because the cookbook itself is about a Southern Italian family that came to Canada. So, and continued on with those types of recipes. So if you do have any ethnic background, that your family came as immigrants, it's a true story and a true nod to them to share their recipes within your own family. So, and I get goosebumps, and if I talk anymore, I'm going to cry. So we won't
Oh,
talk about
no,
that
because then
anymore.
I'll cry and then other people will start crying but you know what? It wouldn't be the first time. So no, we're all good.
Exactly. And the tears will add some salt to your
It's
recipe, so it's all good.
flavor. It's flavor. And I know we're chatting a lot today, and I think because part of today is about like the reminiscing, and also like I have like my little sheets of paper too with my little recipes, and a lot of what's on our website is because Emily and I will kind of go through things that were familiar to us, and then we do it so that we can make sure we have the nutrients that we need and make it easy for everyone. But a lot of these things have memories for us. So I know people email me and they say, I don't like to cook, and that's okay. And they go, I just want to eat, and that's okay. Find a friend who likes to cook and give them the recipe. So
Best
I
advice.
have
Best
friends like
advice.
that. They just want to come to my house. So I cook, and I'm happy to do that. So we are yes, and I see people, yes, don't worry, we've got time. We're gonna keep going because
Yes.
these look fabulous. Um
All right,
yeah,
so we've
I'll
cut
see you in a
them.
little bit.
And remember, I told you that we're going to add flour as we go along. So I'm going to take more of our flour. Now that I've cut it, again, I've exposed those sticky parts. I'm going to sprinkle it with flour again, just lightly, so that I can get all those cut pieces. Okay. Now, for those of you that might be wondering, I might like to make these gluten-free. You can use gluten-free flour. You just take it easy with the dough. You can use a little bit less of the gluten-free flour. Just again, you don't want it to be too sticky. And I find it easier when you're rolling it to kind of form the rope instead, and then you can still cut it into pieces and toss it with a little bit more of the gluten-free flour. Now, officially, these are gnocchi. You can be done, okay? But in my family, we go an extra step and we put some ridges in here, and that's so that the sauce kind of just sits in the little nooks and crannies of those ridges, and it's just a great time for me. I remember doing it. My grandmother sat me at the end of the table, and this is what she gave me, this little basket, which in our dialect, my family's from the south, from Calabria, and it's a gista, which is just a little basket. And if you take a look at this basket, it's got kind of some openness. It's not a really tightly woven basket. And I would sit at the table, she'd give me the little pieces of dough, and I would just roll these little gnocchi and they would catch in the basket. And after you roll them, you want to add another little bit of flour. And then in the basket, you could kind of just shake them like that. Okay. These, next time you plan a trip to Italy and you're going to the south, find an open air market. There's going to be a basket weaver and they're going to be making some of these. So pick one up. I haven't seen them in Italy, or sorry, I've seen them in Italy, not here. But if you search deep, I'm sure in a larger city, where some Southern Italians are, you will find them. So most people don't have a basket. You can find in different gourmet food shops, also Italian delis, gnocchi boards. So these are boards that have ridges. They're also used for pasta as well. Some have a handle and some don't. This one is one that my father made. My dad went into a little kind of side business for a while, and he made gnocchi boards. We had this grand plan of, father and daughter going into business, me with the cookbooks, him with the gnocchi boards. It was going to be great. And so he made it a little bit wider. Okay. But I find that without the handle, it's still just as easy to hold on to. And then same thing, I'm just rolling them. So if you're wondering about rolling them on a gnocchi board, what I have is just a slight pressure in my thumb and rolling it. And I'm not pushing down too much. So I just have a light roll. I'm not making it fold completely over when I do this. Okay. And then it just falls off. So what you end up with is this nice little ridge on the inside and these marks on the inside, or sorry, the other side. So this is just a fun little process that you can sit here or stand, whatever you like, and then roll these gnocchi just like this. So again, because I'm doing this process, what ends up happening is there's a little bit more stickiness that is exposed. So I'm going to toss them with a little bit more flour. Okay. So all this flour that I'm adding is the flour that's going to cook off in the end. So it's not really going to weigh down the gnocchi, which is really nice. Okay. So I'm going to take a little bit of this flour, toss it nicely like this. And then I have a baking sheet. You can use parchment paper on here if you want. You don't have to. I usually just take a little bit of extra flour and then put it onto my baking sheet. Okay, just like so. Now I'm going to roll a little bit more for you. Where did I put the dough? It's right here. Okay, so I'm going to wipe some of this flour off and knead my rope again. Okay, and I know some of you are like, that's great, Emily. Thanks for showing me the basket. Thanks for showing me the gnocchi paddle. I don't have either. Now what am I supposed to do? You're going to use a fork, and I'm going to show you how to use a fork. If you want the ridges, again, you totally don't need to do the ridges. This can go very quickly. You can just roll this out. As I said, cut it up, and you have gnocchi. So I'm going to roll this in the flour like so, and then I'm going to cut my little pieces again. Okay. Like that. And I'm going to show you how to do it with a fork. Now make sure you do have a nice sharp knife for this because it will cut through the spinach easily. Okay. But you can see it has all those nice little nuggets of the spinach throughout, which is what I love. So again, toss it with the flour to get those sticky edges like so. And then I'm going to grab a fork and I'm going to show you how to do it with a fork. So any old fork will do. Okay. And I usually just hold the fork down on my work surface, and it's the same process. Push with your thumb and let it roll off. Okay. I'm going to do it up here so that you can see me do it a little bit closer. in the camera. Okay. So again, I'm not making it roll completely over. It's just to get that little bit of shape from my thumb in there. And that's how you make gnocchi. Okay. So you go through and work through all the dough. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch me do all the dough. I made some ahead of time because that's the whole point of this. You can make it ahead of time. And so what I do is I work through all the dough, roll it like this, okay? And then I put it on my baking sheet and then I pop it into the freezer. And the whole baking sheet. So you do have to have room for a baking sheet if you can. That is the easiest way to do it. You can also cook them fresh, by the way. You don't have to freeze them, but it does, if you have a smaller household, you might want to save some for another time. Okay. So I'm just going to sprinkle this with the flour like so. Okay. And you can work through the dough, leave it on the baking sheet. And then when you're ready to cook it, you can just take them and put them in the boiling water, which reminds me, I'm going to turn my boiling water on. Okay. So that it is actually boiling when I need it. So the make ahead is you take that and you put it into the freezer. Okay. So Tracie's going to entertain you for 2 minutes while I go to the freezer and get the gnocchi out.
Oh my, I'm going to entertain. This was not scripted. Okay. So actually I have a good tip for everyone. Okay. Don't skip freezing the tray where they're spread out. If you put them all into a reusable container or a reusable or resealable bag, you will freeze one entire enormous clump together. It won't work. And then it's all this effort has been for naught. So it's really important when I do this, I have enough room in my freezer. I just pull it out, pop it in very carefully, leave it in. Honestly, like what, 15 minutes, not even. I freeze as I go. And then once they're frozen, I put them into whatever container they're going to go into the freezer. And that's it. But don't skip this step because they'll all stick together.
So
And that would be
this one
a
I use
shame.
parchment paper. Okay. So you can hear them. They're
Yeah,
frozen.
I even use a tea towel. I put a
Yep.
clean tea towel on the cookie sheet, put a bit of flour. And then you just
So
shake them out launder. Here, we've got Roy in the back. Let's take a look above.
so
Look at them.
these are the ones I made earlier. And in my freezer, I have a deep freeze, so it usually only takes about an hour to get them nice and solid. If you have a freezer that is kind of top or bottom, sometimes it takes a little bit longer just because it's a smaller freezer. So just leave them in there till they're solid. But see how like they're stuck together, but they're not. Because all you have to do is take them apart. And this is
And you
when you
can
can,
really see the ridges, Emily. Like now you
yeah.
can really see the ridges that you've done.
And so this is when you can take it and measure out, a quarter of it, and you're going to just make some for yourself, or maybe you're just going to make some for two of you, and put it in an airtight container. You can put it in a airtight bag, whatever you like, and then pop it back in the freezer. So, and in the freezer, this can last easily for a few months. Mine don't last that long because everybody in the family always wants to eat them. So I try to make multiple trays at a time. And this whole tray is one tub of ricotta. So this is one recipe right here. Okay. So it makes close to 2 pounds, like about a pound and a half. Because remember, we have a pound of the ricotta and then we have to add the flour to it as well. Okay. So I usually like to serve this for 4 to 6 people. Um, Great as a first course if you're just having it on its own, but it's also delicious as a side dish. Okay. So these are beautiful gnocchi. And you know what, Tracie?
Tell
I
me,
think
Emily.
I think I'd like to give something away. Are we allowed to do this kind of halfway
I
through?
I think well for today it's going to be, we have a special day today. Yes, what is that? What is one of the surprises we have?
So what I didn't tell everybody is that my dad passed away in 2017. And so I don't have any more gnocchi boards, but I do have some set aside for very special occasions like this one. And because we're celebrating our 10th anniversary for Per La Familia, I think my dad would be very happy to know that someone that's watching today can make some gnocchi with one of his gnocchi boards. So why don't we give away
Oh my
one
gosh.
of the Fernandez original gnocchi boards?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I've got someone here and I've pulled, let me just see here. So BB Haniff from Toronto, Ontario. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced your name. Congratulations. I will email you after. You've won the gnocchi board. You've won a very one of a kind gnocchi board from the Richards, from Emily's family. So congratulations, BB.
Awesome. All right. See, I told you there'd be surprises today. There'd be fun. There's also lots of talking. Does anyone
Yes,
have
I
any other
know.
does anyone have any other questions? Because we're gonna actually make the
Yes.
sauce. We have to
Yes,
make
we're
the
gonna make, and
sauce.
then this is really fast, but this is also just to give you other information. So, oh, actually, we've got a couple of good questions here. Although Nancy did share like this, she can see how much fun this would be to do with her grandkids. So, yes. And I would even say, I mean, again, I like to make mess once and then not again if I can help it. I've even doubled the recipe because I'm like, if I'm gonna pull it all out and you've got other people, or you want to like pop music on and make it, a
Yeah.
one day kind of in the kitchen, which I tend to do, like you could even do that, and then they're just on hand. So there we go. Here's a really good question. Um, Beth is asking if it's better to cook these from fresh or frozen.
There is no better. It's what works for
Yeah,
you. So I have cooked them both ways, fresh and frozen. Here's the major difference. Fresh, they take a little bit less time. That's
yeah,
really it. They and we're going to go through that process. That's why I'm boiling the water back there. It really doesn't take much time at all, whether they're fresh or frozen. It's really just about getting the consistency through and through when they're frozen. So when they're fresh, you're going to see they float up to the top fairly quickly, and then they just need about a minute or two to cook through because we don't want to have that raw ricotta flavor. And
yeah.
if you taste one, you'll know what I mean. Where the frozen ones, you want to make sure, obviously, that they're not frozen in the middle. So they do take a couple more minutes. So there is really a benefit to go fresh and frozen here. The benefit of the frozen is that you can do it ahead of time, which is, I think, what a lot of people really like. And you can make more or you can use less, right? So I don't have to cook this whole pan. And then the other thing, and I'll talk about it a bit more when we're cooking them, is that you don't actually have to cook them all at the same time. So I'll show you what I mean by that. And because of the season, because like all these tomatoes came from my garden, I cannot tell you how many tomatoes I have. So if you're not making a fresh sauce, and by that I mean using your fresh tomatoes to make a nice puree, you can do this quick, what I call bruschetta type sauce, where it's all the ingredients that you would put in a bruschetta, but you're not putting it on bread. You're putting it with the pasta, which is absolutely delicious and fresh and super, super quick. So quick that I want to make the sauce first so that I can put the gnocchi in because this can sit, the gnocchi, in a lot of
No.
cases, pasta non spetta, which means pasta doesn't wait. You cook it, you put it in the sauce, and you serve it. That's really the best way to enjoy it. And gnocchi fits into that category. Okay.
No, perfect. One other real quick question, and then we're going to
Yeah.
go, and then we'll ask the rest. So, there was a question about the type of ricotta, and I think you answered one question earlier about, does it have to be whole milk or part skim? Does it matter if it's traditional or extra smooth? Like, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to get on a container that's going to tell you, but if you go and buy a fresh ricotta, they're not going to say anything. They're just going to say, here's the ricotta. Right, Emily? Like that's
Yeah.
essentially what you're getting. So does it make a difference? Is there a difference?
I honestly, I can't tell. Like, so I have used regular traditional ricotta. I've used extra smooth. I've used light. And to me, it all tastes delicious. So I'm going to tell you this, whatever's on sale is what I'm going to buy. And this week, I found regular ricotta for $5.49, which used to be, an overprice for ricotta because you could get it for $3.99. But we all know where we're living right now in this world where things are a little bit more expensive. But Traditionally, right now, you'll find ricotta, depending on where you are in the country, anywhere from $6 to $8 typically for a pound of ricotta. So when it's $5.49, you bet I'm buying some of that. You do have to make sure though of the containers because different brands, they're not all a pound, like between 450 to 500 grams. Some of them are 300 grams, which is totally fine. You can use those. Just remember, you're not going to need as much flour and you're not going to need as much spinach. If you use all the spinach, they will be very spinachy, but you will need to use less flour because there's less ricotta. You could also buy 2 tubs and then add a little bit more flour because you'll be closer to 600 grams of the ricotta, and you'll be closer to a little bit over 3 cups of flour. So it all depends on what you end up picking up. If you go to an Italian deli, like that ricotta I showed you from the beginning, that's kind of mounded over, that's like a pound and a half of ricotta. So I usually eat the whole top of it first and level it off so that I know, not myself, by the way, I do share. And then I level it off so that it's a pound of ricotta that's perfect for us to use. Okay. So quickly, this sauce, literally, it's super quick. This is some of these fresh tomatoes that I diced up, juice and all. Okay. You can use plum tomatoes. If you have these grape tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, you can quarter or halve them. I know that when cherry tomatoes come to be, they are everywhere. It's amazing. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of garlic. Okay. So what I want to do, and this is just fresh garlic that I'm using. I just want to cook it for a little bit so that some of the tomato juice comes out. I really want the freshness of the tomatoes to be here. If you don't have fresh tomatoes, by the way, you can use canned diced tomatoes. Totally okay. All right. I'm going to get something just to stir this together. And we're not going to add too much to this because right now in season, the flavor of the tomatoes will carry through beautifully. I started with a little bit of oil, whatever oil you have at home. If you want a little bit more of that kind of Mediterranean feel, an olive oil would be beautiful. You could also use a neutral oil that doesn't have too much flavor, and then the flavor of everything else comes through. So it's totally up to you. Okay. Now we are going to add just a little bit of seasoning to this so that it all comes through and adds a little bit of color. So I have some chopped parsley, but I also, you can't see this, but I have a basil plant here. And I'm going to pull a little bit of fresh basil off. I'm going to garnish with it after too, but you can take some fresh basil and just kind of tear it in here as well. If you don't have basil, don't worry about it. If all you have is basil and no parsley, switch it out and do that. It's still going to taste delicious. And actually, mint, for those of you that have a ton of mint still in your garden, mint is beautiful in this as well. I think that the fresh herbiness of this sauce, and not just with gnocchi, any pasta, this works really, really well. And in the end, if you don't want to make pasta, just serve it with some crusty bread and it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. All right, so I have my parsley. I'm also going to add about half a teaspoon of dried oregano. This is oregano that I dry from my garden. So it has a beautiful, beautiful aroma. A little bit fresher than store-bought oregano. So if you had oregano in your garden, it's great to dry it. Guess what? That recipe is in Per La Familia too, how to dry your herbs, because that's something that I grew up doing with my mom and my grandmother and still do. And then I'm going to add some parsley. And here's where, if you're Calabrian, you might want a little bit of hot pepper flakes. If you're not Calabrian, Sicilian for sure. Sometimes in the north of Italy, not so much. But if you like a little bit of heat, you can put some chili flakes in, okay? Or double the amount. It's totally up to you. You could also put a fresh chili in here. If you're growing some hot peppers, mince it up, and that'll give you a really nice flavor in here too, okay? So you can see, I'll just move this over here for a sec so you can see what I'm doing. This sauce comes together. Look at how beautiful the tomatoes, they break down. They've given off a little bit of juice, okay? But you can still see the pieces of tomato in here. And that's what I really love because the excuse me, the pepper caught me. The texture of those little bit pieces of tomato are really, really nice. And then of course, a little bit of salt, about half a teaspoon, but you can do this to taste. Okay. So if you have super sweet tomatoes, you might not need any salt at all because we're also going to add some cheese to our pasta. Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. The sauce is done. You can cook this a little bit longer if you want to break down the tomatoes so that there's not so many pieces. But you really just need to create the aroma in the kitchen, which happens very, very quickly, and then it's good to go. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off and just set it back here. And then I'm going to bring over my pot of water so that we can cook these gnocchi up. Okay, so I have a nice big pot of water here. I'm going to turn this back up. Now this is already boiled a couple times because I really wanted to make sure that the water was ready to go. So if I add this and it's not at a rolling boil, trust me, it has boiled, okay? Also because I want to show you all the steps, but I have not seasoned it. So this is always something that can cause a little bit of anxiety for people. We need to add salt to the to the pasta water. And in a nice big pot like this, if you add about a tablespoon as a measurement, if that's what you feel comfortable with, that would be great. Okay. So we've added salt to the gnocchi. We have that flavor. We added some salt to the sauce. We have a nice flavor balance. We're going to add some salt to the water so that the gnocchi cooks nicely. Okay. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon in here. Or more. Don't look. I'm just kidding. That was about a tablespoon. And then you can see the bubbles are happening. I'm going to take my gnocchi. So these are the frozen gnocchi. I'm going to bring them back over here. And I'm going to add them into the pot. Now, here's where, if you don't have a nice big pot like this, you can cook half at a time because it cooks quickly. Okay. So you can put half your gnocchi in, take them out, put them in a nice bowl, and do the other half. I'm going to put them all in. And I'm going to use the benefit of parchment paper, provided it doesn't break. And I'm going to slip them right in. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to get these last few stragglers here. All right, so I've added them all. Now, remember, they're frozen. So what that means is that that drops the temperature of the water quite quickly. But what I do want you to do is go in there and stir. Because if you don't, and this is really important if they're fresh, remember Tracie was talking about that big gnocchi, if you pile them all together, that can happen here too. So you do want to get in there and stir so that they're moving around and the water's moving all around them so that they cook really, really nicely. Now, here's the other thing with gnocchi. This is what I do if I'm making ravioli, tortellini, any stuffed pasta, is I don't pour this into a colander. So if you looked in my sink, you'd see a mess right now, but there's also no colander in there, okay? I'm gonna use, it's a spider, but a slotted spoon would work, okay? Or something like this. I'll pull it out to show you. To lift up the pasta, or you could use a small sieve, okay? So what we're gonna do is pull the gnocchi out and add it to the sauce. So much so that that's one of the reasons why I use this larger, deeper skillet so that I can just add it right in. And the best part about this is that I can put this back on the heat and heat it through, and it'll be a nice hot pasta dish. Because oftentimes that's a struggle, right? Like getting pasta to the table hot. You know who complains? It's usually the spouse. Guests would never complain about that, right, Tracie?
I'm looking for my audio button. No, I was going to comment. No, no, of course. No, the guests don't, of course, especially if they're not family. They won't
Exactly,
complain.
exactly.
We have so many people who are just saying that they're loving, the class and they love that, they're learning so much. So we're so happy that we're getting to do this. Are we ready to strain? And also remember, pasta water is your friend. Gnocchi
Yes,
water is your friend. Not a
it is.
lot, but just to loosen things up if you need it.
So what we want to do here is we really want the gnocchi to float. Okay, so just give it a little bit. I promise you it will float. And then we need to taste the gnocchi because we really do want to make sure that they're nice and cooked through. That's really important. Okay. So don't walk away. You want to stir this. You'll also notice that I didn't add anything else to the water. Sometimes you'll see people adding oil or other ingredients. I just added the salt for seasoning, and the amount of water will help kind of keep everything moving in the pot. So that's why if you don't have a large enough pot, don't put all the gnocchi in because you don't want them sitting on themselves because you really want to have them nice and fluffy, okay? And I can start to see as I stir them, they're going to start to float. and they will be ready soon. So are there any other questions? Because I know everyone's been so patient. Thank you for celebrating with me. This is kind of the kickoff of the fall. I know it's not fall yet. However, um, in 2015, Per La Familia hit the bookshelves in the fall. And 10 years later, we're doing it
We're
again
feeling a
and
little folly in
showcasing.
my orange, so there we go. So kind of doing that. No, we're so happy that you're sharing this with us. And we do have a couple of other questions. So um Beth had asked, like, do you add water to the spinach? So we talked about that. You want to drain all the water out. So that's
Yes.
done. And other people are saying, what other kinds of sauce can you do? And I mean, so here's the thing. You could even use these in like a broth if you wanted to have soup.
Yep.
So they're very versatile to have food on hand. So Emily, like, what would you do? I do love a brown butter sage.
Brown butter sage in this book.
Is my favorite.
Gorgonzola cheese sauce, so good in this
Yeah.
book. So even just a plain tomato sauce, which is kind of the most popular in our household. But I'm going to give you a secret of the brown butter and sage sauce. So you melt the butter till it's nice and brown. You'll smell that nuttiness, which is absolutely delicious. Add the sage, fry it up in there, and then toss the gnocchi in the skillet with the butter and sage. And then to get just a little bit of crispiness on that, you'll start to see it brown, and then add some fresh Parmigiano. Okay. And then it just crisps up the cheese. We are adding cheese to this, by the way. So here's some nice Parmigiano. Grana Padano works too. Pecorino, if you want a nice little salty kick. And it's absolutely delicious. So it just takes it like this brown butter sage with that little bit of fried, and then the butt and the cheese on top to like this level. So it's absolutely delicious. And that one is my son's favorite. So when he sees this, he'll be like, yeah, I'll eat it. But if it was brown butter and sage, he'd be all over it.
Pesto, there's all different kinds, like, and these you can use like, I mean, I've seen them in like a stew. We actually have a recipe, I think, where we added gnocchi or dumplings in with, like, if you're having like a stew, if you're making a curry, and instead of rice, you could use gnocchi. I mean, it's really, again, whatever you like, how to
Mhm.
put them in, as adding some more heft to a meal where you're already getting protein and calcium in good quantities per serving in this recipe. So it's
It
all
is.
about your palate and your kitchen.
This is a great replacement for potatoes and stews.
Oh
So
yeah,
even if you're making a classic beef stew, you just have to wait closer to the end, and you can actually put them in. You don't have to pre-cook them. They'll
yeah.
cook in that stew, and then they help thicken at the end, and they absorb all those flavors. It's absolutely delicious. So if you take a peek here, I can't really move the
Okay,
pot over,
let's do that, Roy.
but you'll see some of it here on the edge, that they floated to the top. See how beautiful they are? And I did taste one. They're good to go. So this is when you just start to scoop them out. Okay. And then I'm going to add them right into my sauce. And this I would do with any sauce, whether it's, the brown butter sage, cheese sauce, tomato sauce. This is the process that I'm going to do. Okay. And get them all in here. I'm going to turn off the heat here so that I can scoop these out. I might go double-handed here, double-fisted, and see if I can do this with both hands and get more out like that. Okay. And you do want to try to get them all out, because if they sit in the water too long, they do tend to swell up and almost disintegrate. But you can see how beautiful they keep their shape. The little bit of ridge is still in there, and they're still kind of light and fluffy, but with that little bit more texture than a potato gnocchi, which gives them, I think, that appeal for so many. And the fact that I didn't have to cook potatoes ahead of time, I just had everything ready to go. Okay, I think I got everything. There we go. Okay, so those are in. And what I'm going to do is just move this pot off here. And then I'm going to put my gnocchi up here, back on a little bit of heat. And I'm going to add some of this cheese. So some parm goes in. Okay, I'll save some to garnish. And then I'm just going to stir this in here all together. So that little bit of cheese adds a bit of creaminess. If you wanted it extra creamy, some whipping cream would be delicious in here. A little knob of gorgonzola would be delicious, or mascarpone cheese would be fabulous in here too. And then you have this beautiful gnocchi pasta, which is a perfect celebration dish to celebrate 10th anniversary or birthdays or holidays or even just to have a nice meal with your family. That's it, Tracie. It's all done.
And if Emily and I weren't talking, this would have been done a while ago. So
It would have for sure.
this is a fast recipe and it does look so good. And I don't know if anyone else thought this, but when you see them on the tray, maybe you're thinking, gee, that doesn't look like a lot. But after they're cooked and in that pot, it looks like quite a serving. So one person did actually, oh, no, Terry, we cannot FedEx a plate to you. I'm sorry. That won't work. That, that won't work. But so these are really, again, I know we talked a lot about, and so if you're not used to eating these, it's something where it's really give it a shot, change the spices, change the veg. I mean, you could definitely use this instead of making rice or potatoes or whatever. This could be a side for like roast chicken. Or it could be like we said in soup or whatever you'd like. So Emily's going to do the taste test because she's not waiting for me to stop talking. She's, and how are they, Emily?
They're perfect. They're delicious.
Perfect.
I wish I could share with everybody. All I need is a nice bicchierino de vino, a glass of
Yes,
wine,
there
to
we
make a
go.
toast to everybody for joining. And you, Tracie?
Thank you. Well, and you know what? And like we said, so it's like let's have fun. We don't need to be all that serious. Yes, we need to make sure we're getting what we need, but we can do it in a fun and delicious way because otherwise we need no more stresses in life. And if you're someone who, quite frankly, really doesn't want to cook, but you're looking for other ways, you can purchase gnocchi at places if you want.
Mhm.
Or like I said, get a friend who wants to cook for you. And you clean, they cook. And especially if you have a small household for one or two, this is perfect.
Yeah, it really
Um,
does work.
it really is. I'm just looking here to make sure. I think we've done all the questions, and people now are just kind of providing, comments like they just think this is so great and it just looks like a really wonderful recipe. I mean, Emily, do we have anything else that we want to share?
So I hope that all of you are still here because we have another surprise. We're going to give away a copy of Per la Familia, and I'm going to
Yes.
sign it to whoever wins, and it'll get from me to you as quick as, well, I'm going to have to say Canada Post gets it.
Well, and you know what? It's actually going to travel quite a ways. Let me just double check one thing here. Yes, Lisa Lee from Vancouver, BC. You're going to get a copy from Emily, personalized to you, per la familia. And so I will reach out for that. And I'm just going to make sure I have all my notes here. I want to make sure I don't miss anyone because I don't want to mess this up. And as usual, I'm going to do it now. We are going to give away the OC apron. So the last giveaway for today is going to go, and I hope I don't mess up your last name, Ingrid Bullbecker from Winnipeg, Manitoba. You're going to get the apron. So yay to everyone. And Emily, really, thank you so much for thinking of us and doing this. And sharing, the anniversary with us. And I know you're going to be doing other stuff. Um, and some people are like, if you Google Emily, you'll find all the links you want. There you go.
And if you
She's on
make anything,
Instagram.
if you have Per la Familia and you're cooking from it, please tag me. I love seeing how everyone's using it at home.
Yes.
I'm Emily Richards Cooks on Instagram. And if you make these, tag us both, Osteoporosis
Please
and
tell
me.
us. Yes.
Yeah.
Show us if you've done, this and
Show us you eating them like me.
show us, yes. I feel like I now need to go do some groceries so I can make these this weekend. But congratulations, Emily. What we do,
Thank
because
you.
I forgot, we have a couple of, just like last little bits we want to share with everyone. See, and you know what? So Mark just messaged us and said, thank you. I might never have tried making these. And sometimes I think we don't because we think something's really difficult, but it's not. So that's why come back and share more with us. And I'm just having a bit of technical difficulties today, everyone. Sorry. So there we go. All right. So Okay, here we go. We have another webinar coming up that's booked on sarcopenia. So if you're interested, you may have heard about sarcopenia, and it is to um, the loss of muscle mass and strength to what osteoporosis is to the loss of bone mass. Dr. Shireen Usmani will join us and she'll explain the symptoms and causes, diagnosis, what you can do about sarcopenia. That is on the website. You can register. It's on the homepage. You can go to the event page. What is not yet on the website, but is coming up, we are going to be doing a Thanksgiving cooking demo on October 9th. And this is for smaller households, so that everyone can celebrate, but also, it's a great protein recipe. It's got vitamin K, lots of great things. So that will be coming up as well. If you are in Toronto, the weekend of October 18th to 19th, Osteoporosis Canada is going to have a booth at the Toronto Menopause Show. So if you're there, please come by and say hello. And in November, we will be having a webinar on bone building treatments with Dr. Alan Lowe. And that will be November 6th. That will also be coming out where you can register. And if you live in Sudbury, there's way more, but these are just like the top ones. If you're in Sudbury, we are going to be in Sudbury November 13th. We're going to be doing 2 in-person education events. One will be in English with some guest speakers. One will be in French with some guest speakers. So make sure you're subscribed to our e-newsletter. Check your email in the coming weeks where you will get more information, details, and you can register. So thank you for that. We had a really great webinar last week on supplements and bone health. If you missed it, no worries. It's on the OC Replay webpage, just like this webinar will be on the OC Replay webpage, where you can watch it again if you missed any tips. Also, we've got lots of other webinars that were recorded that are available, and our podcasts. So if you are looking for information about what you need to know about osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, learn more about osteoblasts and osteoclasts, what they are and what they do, check out the website. Again, it's all at osteoporosis.ca. And thank you. Follow us, Instagram, Facebook, we're even on LinkedIn, even though the logo's not there. So subscribe if you haven't already. And just thanks, everyone. We really enjoyed, coming back in the fall. We have lots of fall programming. So we'll see you at the next cooking demo or trade show or webinar. So Emily, thank you. Congratulations. Keep celebrating, and everyone stay well, be well, and happy cooking. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye, mangia bene.
Mangia bene.